Welcome to Mentor Time, January 2026. And we are just about a month into LinkedIn making sweeping platform changes. And you'll see a lot about what it is. And then I'll tell you about an experiment I did, and hopefully it will help you too. As we always do, I start with the takeaway. So this is a longer takeaway than I like, but because LinkedIn is so complex, you now need to show your expertise in 3 lanes, 3 or 4 lanes, and I'll explain what that means or what I think it means. Because the result is that LinkedIn is looking at not just you doing something on the platform, giving information, but giving your network continual value. And they show that by wanting to interact with your content and starting convos with you and keeping the engagement going. I have a question for you all. I'm curious about who had heard about this when. Did you just hear about it when I updated the topics and gave you this topic? Did you know about it after the holidays? Have you been seeing it talked about? Or maybe you heard about it when it was actually announced in December. So that would be when it just first came out. 0, 1, or 2. When do you remember hearing about this? A 0 for Ron. Okay. And Stephanie says 1, and Mary 1 or 2. Good. So I know you all are on LinkedIn somewhat, but around the holidays it's hard. I think it was around December 1st, because you'll see an article that was written on December 3rd. We'd seen hints of this, but I didn't expect this from the LinkedIn guru. Yeah, thanks, Mary. It's true. I do keep up on things, and I try to make sure you all know about them. All right. So here's what I've been hearing the last couple weeks from people saying, okay, LinkedIn's changing. I don't need to change my strategy. I'm not like these are 2 top voices. There's 5 top voices in career coaching. So, and that's what people tell me also about posting as well sometimes. There are people who do know how to use what's called engagement bait or clickbait engagement or any other variety of names. When you offer something for free and say, put a link in, DM me or put this word in my comments, they're all about getting interactions, because although LinkedIn a few years ago was prioritizing dwell time, DWELL, how long you stayed on the platform, but also on each post, it still was about what their old system that wasn't AI driven was different and counted things more in numeric things, I guess I would say. And people also told me, look, Sue, I don't need to worry about this. I'm already doing what I need to do. And by the way, I put visuals that I'm making. I picked the oldest one that I knew of, Dali, when they first came out. And we all thought it was great when we could get the 7 fingers on one hand, but we at least got people sitting at desks. That's what I was looking for. All right, so how are we going to get there today? Well, today we're going to talk about everything has changed and in detail so that you can understand what we know already. Then I did an experiment called What Are My Lanes? And hopefully that will help you. And then I always leave with what should you do. And Kevin Turner, I'll just tell you, he's in the first block we talk about. And at the end, he is his LinkedIn name, his URL is president, because he was defined as president of LinkedIn in terms of keeping track of changes. He joined a year after me. I feel a little bit, or no, he joined, I think, a month before I joined in 2004. But he's kept detailed notes, and it's on his featured section. You can go find it. That's where I got his old profile from. All right. Have you heard any advice about the new LinkedIn in the last month? And if someone wants to unmute and let me know what that advice is, that's fine. I have only just begun seeing advice the last couple of weeks, so it may be that you're all shaking your heads no, or just write no in the comments, and we'll move on. But I'd love to hear if someone has had some advice about what to be doing. All right, nose. Okay. All right, good. You'll get more here. All right. So I want to introduce you to Kevin Turner. He's going to form most of the conversation today because he did a great job summarizing some things. But on the left, this was 2007. So he'd been on LinkedIn for, of course, I wish I could go to the Wayback Machine and find my exact profile, but it doesn't have that much on me. Anyway, and here he is now on the right, the president of LinkedIn, but many of us call him that. Very generous, very helpful, very knowledgeable. So Kevin wrote an article on December 3rd, and he said he based it, I have based on twice, he based it on a Cornell University article that's an or archive, people say also, .org, an article that was the details of the underpinnings of LinkedIn and made it digestible for all of us. And Lama, Brew, View is a conflation of the three areas, which we'll talk about. This is where we were until December when this was announced. They prioritize market value filters, skills, a lot of other algorithms measuring reach, sometimes even reactions on posts, whether you click the insightful button or just click the like button, and then profile engine optimization, looking for keywords as well in context. Now, those are in the back seat, and the driver is 3 new AI feed drivers, is what Kevin's calling them. So let's look at these 3. The visibility is still important, but it's being decided now not by how many followers you have who are going to want to see your content, but rather a complex series of rankings and of evaluating what you put out. So Llama 3 is the feed retrieval, Brew 360 or 360 Brew sometimes. That's what we first were calling it when it came out. They talked about it months ago. That's a personalized feed ranking where you're going to rank in someone else's feed. And then natural language search, even more than the Boolean search, and pretty good natural language search we've had for at least a year or more. Llama 3 basically answers, these are his comments, answers the question, who should even see your stuff? And part of that is because what now they are doing is LinkedIn is wanting to feed in who you are, what you do, and who you do it for. So they want to make sure that you're engaging with your network, but giving them value where they're going to respond. Brew 360 ranks you in the feed. As I just said, where do you show up in the feed? And the natural language search, which is AI powered, is for you to be found by humans, a recruiter, a hiring manager, Sue looking for someone she met years ago and can't remember the person's last name and knows she's lived in Africa. Who was that woman who did X and Y? And I could probably find her. I still can't remember her last name. All right. So let's take these apart. Llama 3. So that is a feed, an AI feed that looks at Sue talks about these topics, these problems, serves these audiences. And then it says, okay, based on that, who does Sue match well enough so that her post is shown to those in her, some of the people in her network and beyond. So now you're going to get more people that you're not yet connected to, or a second level for sure connections through someone else will see it most directly. And they're going to pick the matches for you. You can't do anything more than what you'll hear from Kevin in a little while about how you're going to influence this. Brew 360 then looks at, okay, based on this, how am I going to rank this? Is this something that Sue writes that people will want to stay and comment on? Is this useful for her audience, or are they going to say, oh, that's interesting, she met someone that she worked with virtually out in Arizona in person? Is that enough? Who knows? But it does answer the question, are you someone who's worth listening to or reading for or being advised by? All right, and the AI natural language search looks beyond your job titles, which is really good. It's not just your job title that tells them what you do, but your profile, your history, the kinds of commenting that you do all count. So he talks about several things that you can do, one of which is using your lanes. And we'll get back to these things you can do in the third part of what should you do. But I wanted to bring this forward because he wrote this post and comment in the lanes you want to be discovered for. Now, I have been on talks with him twice in the last 2 weeks and know him well enough to write him if I wanted to write him. But I kept trying to think, okay, I know a lot about myself. And I'm writing a book about some of what my expertise is and what I do, and what I think most of you would agree is me. But I thought, do I know my lanes? Because when I wrote the book, I discovered that what I was thinking the book would be focused on is still the focus of the book, but it's written in a completely different way. And so we'll see when you get, well, so some of you have seen it already. But I thought, what are my three expertise areas? You know me, I would say evidence-based results. I would say making sure you don't undersell yourself. I don't know what the third one would be right now, but I thought, okay, I'm going to do this experiment because for sure, someone watching this now or in replay is going to say, that's great, Sue, but what are my lanes? How do I figure it out? So let's go into what are my lanes. Do you know your three lanes? Yes, no, or maybe? One, two, or three? No value judgments. And I had to use my grocery store B-roll recording. And I thought, oh, this is good. I mean, it really was. It's like, oh, now I'm turning a corner. I'm going one way. Well, now what other lanes am I choosing? No, two lanes. One, maybe one. Yes, good. I'm not surprised the yes is Ron. Ron and I are probably more established, and we're not going to change that much. Maybe that's the thing. Thank you. That's really helpful. So the first thing I did, because I knew I needed lots of documents, was I opened Notebook LM into a new portfolio that they defined as mastering the evolving LinkedIn algorithm. I should have taken a screenshot, but didn't. But the first 5 things I put in was Kevin's article, 2 posts on this directly on the new algorithm, and then 2 other posts that talked about signals in the last month. So everything that was pretty new. And I'm going to give you all these prompts here, and I will give, when I send out the recording, I will give a link to the slides so that you can copy the prompts if you want to, or dictate them or whatever to get the text out of a recording. So first I said, use these to summarize 2 things. A description of LinkedIn's new system for ranking, and then identify the top 3 to 5 actions LinkedIn users should do going forward. Now, the summary basically was everything that I just went over with you. In fact, they whoever Notebook LM is, it or they or some gender, basically gave me Kevin's version of it. It was a very succinct, nice, brief summary. Okay, but it gave me 5 actions, and they were mostly for me ho-hum. This one stuck out to me. Pair every take with a story or personal anecdote, because AI can't come up with unique stories from scratch. So this was the third of the shifting content from how to how I do something is what is being phrased by Kevin and others. And the example they gave me is this guy, Tommy Clark, who is talking about it in the new video. And I am not good at stories and anecdotes. I'm sure I have a lot of them, but one of my speaking coach I worked with for 2.5 years, and she'd say, oh, you need to start with a story. And my brain, I guess, doesn't work that way. All right. So I thought that was interesting. It's information I'm going to need to work on. Great. So then I said, okay, let me not presume that I know what Kevin was talking about in those 2 talks. Let me see if there's anything else that Notebook LM can give me. And I asked specifically, what did Kevin Turner mean by the lanes? And this word behavioral signals, and there's another phrase similar to behavioral signals you'll see later. So this is not just your posts, but your reactions and comments, meaning what your network is saying or what you're providing to someone else's network. And the important point about the last couple parts of the long second sentence is, if you are engaging on interesting but not necessarily related to content in your lanes, you're training the algorithm, you're training the three feed drivers away from what your expertise is. So then I said, okay, I'm thinking in my mind, well, of course we need all of our background documentation, the CV, the resume, the cover letters, the full LinkedIn profile, anything I've written that might be helpful. And I asked what information, my information, and also from others, should I review to determine my lanes? And it came up with these three categories, which that's okay. Internal experience, I think that means what our lived experiences, I don't know. And stories, review external intent and market language, okay. Helpful, but right now that's not, it's somewhat helpful for my lane. Maybe it is more important for others. And then review those current behavioral signals. So I got those three, and then I said, okay, give me a list of 10 documents. And I'm thinking resume and LinkedIn profile. Nope, it gave me these 10 names of stuff, search intent prompts. And for me, that's the last thing. The first thing I need is something. So this list, the way it was ordered, it missed for me the big picture. It was too down in the weeds. I mean, it's interesting. We'll go through this, but it's looking at the core playbooks and frameworks I use. Okay, that's great, but you need some overall sense of me. And I realized also that one of the challenges I think people are probably facing now, especially in the US, not those of us who've grown up with long CVs, is a lot of our history isn't written down or used in any way. And AI can't help you for stuff that isn't already written down that you've given them access to, whether it's already scraped off your old LinkedIn profile or whether it's documents I put in Notebook LM. And a lot of the people I know in other job search groups that tell me that they don't understand, what it means to have intellectual property and things like this, I realize we're advantageously helped by that. So they came up with these 10 prompts. I promptly reorganized them. So here's what I say is the process going forward. First, before you even touch specifics, you've got to get the high level expertise. Long CV, resume, any current job postings that show what you're aiming for and where you are wanting to go. Your LinkedIn profile. And when you do this, you need to expand at least your recent 2 jobs so you get all the words in it, because otherwise it's just going to copy what it sees on the screen. Any social media. I have a YouTube channel, I have a Threads, I don't use Insta really, but any of those reports and white papers. And the beauty of Notebook LM is you can use website links, you can use YouTube links, you can use PDFs, interviews, podcasts, any kinds of writing that you can share that helps contribute, because you all may say, no, you don't know what your lanes are, but you really do. You just aren't sure how to express them or what is based in what. And that's why I was happy to do this experiment with you, because I wanted to figure it out. So then it said, okay, well, based on the documents, interviews, and workshops, this was my framing of it, that they didn't ask me for. Please identify these 3 to 4 lanes and that align with how I take mentoring forward. I specified it for mentoring. So it came up with 4. I said 3 to 4 because I wanted to see what that would cut to. I'll probably get it to refine it to 3. But quantifying knowledge, you all know about outcomes and evidence-based. It was interesting. It said AI augmented professional branding. I have been talking about that now for over a year and a half. So that surprised me a little bit. And I thought, oh, that's good. The perspectives are good. As you know, I'm all about making sure you get help on perspectives from other. Strategic transitions for global and public health. Well, that's all over my profile, but also since the chaos of January, February this past year, yes. And then I thought it was interesting. It called out the human centric mentoring, what I talk about with verbal self reflection. And it helped me, I mean, even this writing helped me reflect on myself. And then I said, okay, well, now take those and take these six. So these are six of the 10 document categories that the notebook LM gave me. Take these, and I gave it specifically, start in this column, do this, and put these in. So I wanted a table where the column headings were the 4 lanes, and the rows were each of these strategy areas, categories, whatever. So you can see on the far right, that's the whole thing. And in the middle, I gave you the first line, which makes me laugh because it talks about these unique stories from my career that AI can't replicate, which is true. But it can say that in lane 1 because I actually have done a talk a couple times about finding, when I'm talking about digging out evidence-based results, I talk about finding money in a purse, which I did, and finding a picture of my grandmother in a bathing suit. My grandmother never even wore a pantsuit in the 70s. She always wore a dress, so that was a shock. All right, so very interesting for me to get this put together, and it's still a lot, I'll tell you, beyond what the table format is. It's still, there was a lot of analysis. I realize we may be getting inundated with a lot from AI's data that it gives us. But I said, okay, now I want to take, so these were the last, there are 3 more that we came out of that table of 10. These are 2, target audience clusters and behavioral engagement. They call them logs. Because these 2 for me were about using it. The other ones were specifics. Let me just go back for a minute. These 6 are specifics on specific stories, specific playbooks, core frameworks, things like that. And these to me were the outward looking, what's happening in the network I'm in and how do I foster it. So I had them do something similar, and you can see these results. I just left it there if you ever want to stop the recording and look at it again. Interesting. Some it's new for me, some is not very different, even though we're in a different era of how LinkedIn is ranking it. And then the final one, which was included, was being found by recruiters or hiring managers through this natural language search for the kinds of work I do. And so I said, okay, now identify the phrases, the 1 to 2 phrases that would represent how a recruiter would find me. And it said, find a mentor who helps knowledge workers quantify evidence-based result. Could have thought about that. I probably would have realized that's a big one for me. And find a global health career expert to help mid-career professionals and layoffs. So I put together a 7-step process, if you will, of how you can get to this and feel more comfortable about reorienting your posting. The end of that last session with Notebook LM gave me a little summary, and it said, align your engagement with these specific things because that trains Lama 3 to have a mental model. Basically, it's building a profile of me that says Sue is doing this and that, and here's what we see by differing ways of my engagement. So for example, it said in 2 of the 4 lanes, comment consistently on these 2 things. Okay, great. Because it's now saying then the AI dual encoder, meaning looking at both what you post and give value on and where you should rank in the feed. I think that's what they're saying. Then also answers the question, find a global health career expert who helps professionals quantify evidence-based results. I can't think of anybody except me that would write that kind of sentence, but maybe someone would. AI will tell you to write it. All right, so that's a quick thought about processes. Curious about, is this useful for you? Maybe not right now, it's not useful, maybe somewhat, very. LinkedIn for all of you is part of your life, but it's not your life the way I live it because I work with so many professionals. I've got a 1 somewhat, a 2, yes, very good, a 2, very, yeah, great. I thought you might enjoy seeing that. So now let's make sure we know what should you do. And back to Kevin, who has all the answers again. But this is my first recommendation before we get to Kevin. Whether or not you think you know yourself really well, this is an opportunity to educate yourself even more. And Kevin's article has a few more things in it, but there are also some other people in the references. You may want to look at things they've written. Glenn Cadaret, I think her name is. I'm finding her posts are very helpful these days. But do a version of this. You may want to not want to do all 7 steps, but do a version that helps you get some clarity on, are you speaking to the other side of the convo in the way they need to hear it for LinkedIn's new 3 AI feed drivers, is what Kevin calls them. And if anybody wants to see my portfolio, I have a share link. I will put it in when I send out the recording, which gives you access to look at it. I don't know if you can copy anything from it, but I will send out a link to the slides so you can go into the slides and copy any of the text that you might want for these prompts. They're like most things, they're not hard to write the prompts once you know the goal of what you want. So I don't want to make you all recreate things. Use what's working for me if it works for you, but it'll at least get you started. So Kevin ends his article with 4 profile changes. He calls these proof in motion to increase your discoverability. And part of doing that is to give you confidence and control. And I love that because, I'm all about making sure you're taking your control of your own career and feeling the confidence that comes with that. So I'm a little torn about this one. Rewrite your headline for who you help and what outcome you drive. We did this 4 years ago. Everybody was writing, I help blah, 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 blah. So right now, the formula is usually write your title, job title, write the content area you want to be working in, and then I would never, say you could write, not, you could write anything you want. But when you go through step 4 with me, I recommend that you don't say passionate or motivated to provide innovation. I ask you to put in a result there. But you have 220 characters, and there's a lot you can do. So he says helping mid-size B2B SaaS companies cut and churn and grow, blah, blah, blah. I would make that even stronger if you're going to rewrite it like this. And there are some other examples in a couple of the posts I gave you links for. Try to get them to the outcome. Start with the outcome, start with the impact. I helped Sue totally revamp her whole way of speaking by blah, blah, blah. If my coach wanted to say that, I don't know if she would, but maybe. All right. Second thing, and I admit yesterday we were in a meeting. I was in a meeting with Ken Lang and Linda Brubaker, not yesterday, the other day. And I haven't updated my about section in probably 2 to 3 years. I need to pay attention to this. What problems do you reliably solve? And so don't go in the order of who do you help, what problems, how do you solve, blah, 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 blah. Start again with a bang, kind of like your bio para. That's why we focus at the big picture in your bio para. And then from your bio para, go on to what you would talk as one of your big successes. It doesn't have to be everything. But you have 2,600, I believe it is, characters in the about section. And remember to put in contact information if you have an email address you don't mind sharing, because people can find you more easily. If they're not first level connections, recruiters can't message you easily. But definitely think about the way in which we've used evidence-based results to lead our stories, to talk about the way in which X and Y happened. This is all about evidence-based results. I love, he says, rework experience bullets as evidence, not responsibilities. I actually saw one resume a few weeks ago where they still had, my responsibilities included, coming to work and making the coffee and getting everything off the printer. But I don't see people saying responsible for sales strategy, but I still see the laundry list of I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. So you all know this very, very well. You know how to do these things. So you will have no problem with evidence-based results. Carry your most important ones that you want to focus on into your about section and maybe even into a headline. Oh, sorry, I forgot this was a two-level slide. So he said instead of responsible for X and Y, grew this business from this to this. That's actually a pretty good way to start as an outcome with this one. And then he said by doing these three things. Fine, that looks reasonable for what you want to be saying. But what you want to also talk about, and this gets where about sections are starting to look more like your experiences, is it's if you're repeating stuff that's going to be in your experience, your most recent two jobs, for example, just below the about section or below the featured section, why would you say this summary here? This summary would be two big, for example, I would think two big results that you've used at more than one organization. I worked at both a nonprofit and then a for-profit company where I led research teams in US government contracts. Boring. I delivered an $80 million project on time and also worked with distributed teams pre-COVID days when we didn't have internet to hold even a phone call, blah, 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 whatever are my stories. Mary knows them well. All right. And he said, now you want to stay in your 3 lanes. Now, he said 3 to 4 lanes the other day, and so I just picked up on that. People are basically advising that it's, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. No one's going to count it and say, Sue has 4. Why does she have 4? And Mary only has 2. Doesn't matter. But this is giving signals, and the signals have to be the way in which, and we don't have time to do all this, but I'm going to show you an experiment. There are people, including Kevin, who are showing ways that this has to be a different hooks going into the post. For example, instead of saying, you want to know the top 3 things for writing evidence-based bullets? That would attract people in the old days. Now, they don't want just the how-to. They want this is what I'm struggling with. They want an anecdote, Sue. What am I going to say? I have to go back and look and see if those tables gave me anything for this. But I have to start with the stories. They want you to be homey, folksy, casual, authentic. I'm tired of that word because it doesn't mean anything, because you can only be as authentic as you put out there. And when you're putting it out in a career situation, you're not going to put yourself in a bikini as the visual, saying, I can do PhD math even in my bikini, or whatever you would write on LinkedIn. Keep showing up. I have the challenge of having the long opportunity and challenge, the long work with global health and public health. So I have a whole network there. And then I have a network of people that know me. Those people all know me as a practitioner of public health. And now I have a whole mentoring group of colleagues that know me for mentoring and have no idea what my previous life is. So I think it's interesting. I don't think it's not going to be as much as I'm making this sound so big and huge. So keep commenting, not just thoughtfully, substantively. You know me, I want you to have substance in there. Even congratulations can be recognizing someone's bringing epidemiology to a new company, or won't this be great that you see the inside of drug company trials where you were working on the monitoring side 2 years ago, or whatever. Now, Kevin's proposing an experiment, and this goes a little beyond what I put into Notebook LM. I haven't done this, and I probably won't do it this week because I'm getting ready to travel, but I might. Pick 1 to 2 discovery phrases. I don't know how you'd find those, but he gives you some examples. Someone who helps first-time founders get their first 10 B2B customers. Pick those phrases and then update your headline, the top of your about section, and in your your current role or your last 2 roles, update the bullets to include those phrases. Now, I don't know how you get all those phrases into some of the work you've done, no matter what you write. But his point, I think, is a good point, that what you want to do is be seen, have people, and have the feed, the electronic AI drivers, feed you into showing you to profile views to other people who wouldn't have seen you. You appear in different search appearances. I have noticed that my search appearances have fallen off. A year ago, I was being shown over almost 500 a week, and people were signing up for the course. Now I know why. They were testing out all their AI. And note the kinds of people who start engaging with you. That's all came from the article, so you'll see that. And then he said, and try to post 2 to 3 times directly about that outcome or problem, some aspect of what you did, and comment on 5 to 10 posts in that niche, if you can find that niche easily, with thoughtful multi-sentence responses. And he asks you to let him know after 7 days on the LinkedIn Llama article he wrote. But I want to just remind you, so that's what it means to show your expertise in your 3 lanes. The expertise now is couched in make sure you're giving your network continual value so that they want to interact with you, engage with you, and start conversations and continue conversations. I'll just show you just a few quick, there's just 5 things to look at if you want results. And Ron, are you ready to give me comments on this exciting exchange of what we're doing?
Wow. It's very interesting. And as I said, I had no real idea what was going on. And my first question to you is, this sounds like it's going to affect our course.
Oh yeah, huge,
Yeah,
huge.
and so because we spend that fourth session on LinkedIn, but the lead up to getting to the fourth session, presumably that it would also have some consequences there.
Yeah, and Ron and I've talked in the last couple mentor times and review meetings about the way the course needs to change. I've rethought the biopara again from a year and a half ago. Welcome, Brittany. I'm so glad you joined too. I saw you might. Yes, and it's going to require more. This video will probably be one that I'll ask people to watch for background. And we frankly don't have enough signals yet, even from Kevin and other big experts who think they know what's going on. And Kevin's always part of an early testing group. So he's been seeing some of this, but not all rolled out together. So,
Yeah, for me, I guess we took 40 minutes or so in this presentation. So this is quite a lot of content. And so I'd be interested in how it will affect what we end up doing in that fourth module and other modules. So
yeah.
that's my comment. It's very interesting.
Anybody else have anything they want to say? You can unmute or type it if you want to type. Stephanie,
Oh, I just put a question in the chat.
I saw the question.
Okay. We can
So-
cover that later.
All right. Do you want to talk about it on today or another time?
Yeah, I was just curious since
Well,
I
I
was
think it's
updating
relevant
my
for,
biopower.
I always like to talk about it because ageism is everywhere. A year and a half, 2 years ago, we saw a lot of it starting in the 40s, early 40s, like 40-year-olds. Now it's just become a kind of a whack-a-mole game kind of thing because young people, the entry-level jobs are drying up. We're seeing entry-level jobs requiring 2 years of experience, which is not entry level. But we're also seeing people who are older who are getting jobs. And part of the ageism is what do you keep on? This is what Stephanie was asking. And what do you remove? Now, remember, the whole reason you have a long CV is so your history is there. When you write a resume, when you update your resume for a particular job, you are looking to put in the information that's relevant for the job that you are getting, that you're applying for. And your goal, that one goal in that first step, is not to go all the way through. Your one goal is get in and get selected to be one of 10 interviews, or at least contacted for a screening interview. And then after that, you have the opportunity, hopefully in the application, to put a cover letter in. I was just hearing about cover letters as the third page again on Saturday. I was in a meeting with Al Smith, the hired guy, who knows absolutely Abby, who many of you may remember I've advised about the cover letter for 2 decades now that I've known her. The cover letter and your interview can talk about what helps. There are language and scripts around how you get through ageism discussions. Like, yes, I'm towards the end of my career, but I'm not ready to start working and stop working. And what I'd like to do is be able to work in a significant role. I'm not expecting to be a VP again. I am not expecting the same remuneration, but I know I can bring you the mentoring, the institutional memory if it's internal, whatever. I thought we may have talked about this in a review meeting. So start removing the number of years worked. This is a conundrum. A lot of people tell you not to put it in. That's fine. But they're going to know that you're experienced just by your job titles and the places you've worked and what you've done. Yeah, I mean, this what makes me laugh about removing when you graduated from college. People can graduate from college at 40 and become a VP a decade later, and that it's not being graduating when you're 22 and suddenly then later you have to remove that date. They're going to figure it out. And I'll tell you, with so much stuff on the internet, you probably don't even need to leave those dates in there. I did say, I think, on whatever we were on recently, I think that resumes are going to still be important. But I think we're getting to a point where AI is so good that people eventually, recruiters and hiring managers are going to probably have to do and want to do more of the work on their own. Like, we'll ask for candidates, but we're going to type in like this natural language thing. I must have said this a month ago. We want to find candidates who have X and Y. AI could handle all those criteria where an ATS can't necessarily. So I wouldn't start moving things right now until I knew a couple things. Number one, what is the job posting that you're aiming to apply for saying, so that you can couch your language around what they need? Because if you're applying, it says it's a senior enough job that your age shouldn't matter. We all know it will. We all know we can figure it out. That's why they love, I'll tell you, two recruiters in the last month have verified this. When they get a list of candidates from the ATS, the first thing they do is they do not look at the resume, they go look at their LinkedIn profile. They want to see you. They want to see if there's consistency between your profile and the resume you sent in. So I would be careful about removing it, because in your job, Stephanie, you've got, your 20 years of CDC is coming up, I believe, right? Are you at 22? I was trying to remember the other day. You're going to have a lot of experience, and it's very hard for people to ignore that, but it's also hard to bury it, because that means deciding what you're taking out. So if you told me you were applying for a senior technical advisor role, I would say, great, then leave the years off and just write a bio para and an intro sentence that specifically speaks to what you do in bioterrorism or biosecurity or whatever people are writing, whatever you're applying for, and rather than the larger role that you've had as assistant branch chief, I think you were. Anyway, does that help you? I babbled on about what you could do, because there's no easy answer without a lot more documentation.
Well, your expansive answer was really helpful to know that it's happening on both ends of the
Yeah.
spectrum. And what I've noticed is that, especially with state government, local government, people think that after they start looking at, oh, you've worked here X number of years, you're only going to be working here additional, 8 or 10, when in reality, all the retirement numbers have moved and changed, and the Social Security, and so all of that. So it's been really interesting to be getting some of these questions where, I'm like, I'm not even close to retirement. But yet the number of people that have asked that question has been really interesting.
Yeah.
with
And
all of the other things going on
a
here.
lot of people, even before the economy in the last 2 years, a lot of people were saying, I'm not ready to retire. I think people in their 60s and 70s are much more vital than they were in my parents' generation. And you all know how old I am, so you know that my parents would have, my dad retired, I think, in the early 90s. So things have changed a lot, but there are reasons to want to stay on, but it should be your choice and not something that's being forced on you. I mean, right now, the lack of jobs, a lot of jobs, is huge and it's real. But that doesn't mean that people aren't getting jobs. Yeah.
That's good to know. That's good to hear and encouraging for colleagues. Thank you.
Trying, trying. I mean, we do what we can do, but as I said, I'm seeing more and more things come up about about open jobs that are, just very interesting jobs that didn't used to make it to LinkedIn before the chaos we've all been through. So the best thing people can do in your situation and your colleagues is start collecting job postings that are the kinds of jobs that they want, that have parts of the jobs that they want, that seem interesting, and don't put geographic restrictions on them. Try to gather the data, because the data about job postings always gives you what's the current thinking, what's someone phrasing something. I've been looking for jobs that are asking about AI competency outside of AI IT people, and we still don't see a lot of that. So have them gather things up, because that's a very active role they can take. Notebook LM, or if a lot of people pay for ChatGPT or other Claude, wherever you can store multiple documents and keep analyzing them, that help you decide what you want to be when you grow up. And the last thing I'll close with is they also need encouragement to think about the fact that what happens if they can't be an employee? Meaning, how do you manage being unexpectedly self-employed? If you're let go, or if you do retire but you still want to work, you have to learn how to run a business. And that's probably one of my top two advice in the last 2 years. And Ron's nodding his head about when I read that report, I guess it was a year and a half ago, that 20,000 CEOs were saying they were going to vastly cut their employee bases and use a lot more consultants and contractors. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
think as
Ron,
I,
you've got, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say is because it's not that I aged out or anything, but as I left the military, I mean, I was still youngish, but I was a senior sort of individual, and then getting into work. And then eventually I realized that the best place to go next is in consulting. And so I ended up becoming a person who operated a business as part of what I was doing, which of course is a new skill set. And and the whole marketing and all the rest of it stuff that goes with trying to be your own business person at the same time as being offering up your expertise in whatever it was that you do. And so those things become really interesting challenges, because you have to acquire new skills that previously you probably ignored, or you may have been aware of, but didn't really play into it. So that can be quite a hurdle as you move into it. But it can be lucrative and it can be worthwhile. It depends on the market you're in and what you're offering in that marketplace.
Thank you, Ron. Anybody else have any comments about either about ageism and jobs, or about the LinkedIn sweeping changes, I called them, in LinkedIn?
So that was a lot of great information, but what would be, if you had to tell us the first thing you would do in tackling this new approach? Just for us to have a kind of a starting
The
point,
first
what would you
thing
recommend?
is analyze yourself, analyze your portfolio, put in every document you can feel comfortable sharing publicly. Like Stephanie, you've got a lot of articles, but also job postings that show where you want to go. Because Stephanie, if you're looking forward, if something happened at CDC, you may not stay in that exact lane, but you want to know what your grounded threads, the threads of your career are. So I would say the first step is always, What have you got? What have you done? That's what I tell everybody who comes to me and says, "Oh, I haven't updated my resume in 3 years." Okay, you still need to do a long CV because you don't know how much has changed. That's my view of it. So starting with that, and then I would actually take what I've done. You could shortcut what I've done. I would say, ask it to look at your LinkedIn profile specifically and say what kinds of things have been effective posts for you, and then how do you shift the language and the topics for what your new lanes will be, and the hooks and the what you should start with, the how I do something versus how to do something. I think that that's not a good phrase that I guess Kevin or someone else used it, but it's definitely more about how I've helped others do this and become a success, how I've been able to save $1 million. I don't know what, whatever.
Well, what Liz, or Sue, you sometimes says you talk about how let's tell our story.
Yeah,
So that's what I was hearing was that
yeah.
when I encounter this situation, this is how I have done it in the past. I think that's the kind of thinking that they're sounds like they're talking about. And
Good
this is what
point.
I've done,
Good point,
or
Ron. Thank you.
this is what I did recently in order to solve this problem, and this is what I did. This is how I did it, etc. The approach, the thinking behind it, decision processes, the like. That I mean, that's quite a compelling story because it reflects your work style as well. So
Hmm.
if you can reflect it, it then becomes a case that is similar. Well, it's a case that people can look at and say, oh, yeah, this is an example of the kind of work a person does because I'm getting an image of the thought processes that went into it. So anyway, that's what occurred to me when you were talking about it.
I love that. It's an excellent point, Ron. It really is more and more about storytelling, but storytelling by itself is not just sitting down and talking about Alice in Wonderland. It's really about what's the lesson here and what does it mean for other people, which is why we like being able to use people's examples, because even though they're not the same work topic, people get ideas from each other. All right. Anyone else? Stephanie, did you have something else?
No, that was it. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are meeting next week, and next week we have another L topic. You're always creating your legacy, and I am determined to have you all admit that you've already got legacies that you need to understand and live out. I'll show you my 4-quadrant framework and ideas about how legacies become basically the way we're working towards writing outcome statements. We need to start claiming our credit for those steps of legacies we're creating continually. So that will be next week. I finally remembered a topic, Ron. I got 5 or 6 people since the second message about the topics people wanted to vote on. And someone asked me for more on AI again, which I was planning to put in. So I'm just going to put in the ones I know that I want to do in what order. I mean, the big topics were today was of interest, legacy sort of, and then I can't remember the third one. And then it split. 2 people wanted this, 4 people wanted that, and we're going to do all the topics. I wanted to get people to tell me what they want to hear, but that's all right. In the absence of that, I will ask Ron to close the meeting. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming, Brittany. Nice to see you. After a while, I've been seeing your stuff on LinkedIn. Your stuff. I always call it your stuff. I've been seeing your contributions on LinkedIn. I know you've been busy. And Mary and Stephanie, great to see you both too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. And I look forward to next week's topic. In particular, because I took a course a little while ago talking about personal legacy. And it's interesting. I was talking to somebody last weekend about legacy. And the whole idea a lot of people have is legacy that has something to do about when you're dead. And so it's money that you might give to somebody. And that's not at all what we're talking about here. We're talking about how what you're known for, and what you want to be known for. I hope I'm not stealing your thunder there, Sue, but that's
Not at
certainly what the
all,
kinds of
not at
that
all, please.
that's the kind of stuff that I'm interested in.
That would be great if you can come. Brittany, I will make sure you're also I think you're already on the list, but everybody who doesn't come still gets the recording and today it'll be the slides, but it'll also be the links. You always get the reference links so that you can look back at things. I know Stephanie wrote me a nice note for Christmas and said how she tries to watch the ones that she has to miss and often will look at the references. She's such a good researcher. All right, everybody, thanks. Hope your new year has started as well as it can be, and that most of us, other than Ron, are probably in cold weather situations, but it's winter time, so that's what it's supposed to be. Take care, everyone. See you in a week.